in Geneva. WIPO is the World Intellectual Property Organization, so they protect all the patents and
trade and brand names.
That sort of
in everything intellectual property. So it's patents, trade secrets, designs, industrial designs, brand names.
So anything innovative that you guys come up with, go to WIPO to protect it first off.
Right.
Okay, so a few little maintenance things. Paloma is going to put towards the end of the session a link for a survey, which is quality control for us. So we'd like you to fill it out. Be honest. If it's bad, you say it's bad. If it's very good, you say it's excellent. And also, we're going to start the presentation, and we'll have some breaks for questions in between. I will read your questions if you can type them on the chat box. Also, if you would like to ask your own question, you can raise your hand down the bottom of your margin there. There's a little hand. Or you can just read somebody else's question if you think I've missed something. Or I might just pinpoint one of you and say, can you please read out the question? Just to make sure you're awake. And also, feel free to interact, feel free to react. I'm sure Chitra is up for a good fight when she can find one. And the attendance will be done automatically, and then Paloma will record. Is that correct? Or shall I record?
Yes, I just began recording.
Okay, perfect. So there you go, Chitra. The floor is yours, and I'll just enjoy.
Thank you very much. And thank the live audience, and especially thank the online audience. For me, this is not a real first, but I'm still not used to this way of communicating with people. I'm learning. So there I'm a student, you're a new generation ahead of me. And thank you, 16 and Paloma, for inviting me to talk about the subject I'm passionate about. Most of what I'm saying can be found in this publication, which is also available in the library of the business school. So I am Chitra Radhakishun, and I'm speaking in my personal capacity. So you may not quote me on the bad things I said. This is called a proposed program, but at this stage you have no way of changing it. So we're going to go through a short introduction, speaking about ethics and governance. You have an idea when we talk about ethics, what we talk about. If it's no, you may say it. And we're going to talk about ethics in business and organizations, the concept of business ethics, ethics in international organizations, and I mean, any international business is also an international organization. Google is an international organization. Microsoft is an international organization. So, but the intergovernmental organizations are also international organizations. And then I will go very quickly to ethics in the United Nations system. We will talk about corporate accountability when heads of organizations go to jail or not. We talk about minimizing the risk of illegal behavior. That means trying to stay out of jail. And we talk about business advancement the straight way, the ethical way, without cutting corners, without behaving illegally. And then I would like to close with career and reputation. You're all very young people at the beginning of your careers. And for some of you, reputation might not be on your list of issues. You think of jobs, of career, but one thing that will stick to you forever and ever, and even with the right to be forgotten on the internet, your reputation is what you build. It takes years to build a good reputation and less than a second to ruin it forever. So this is the program. Is there any violent objection to this program? Only violent objections, others don't count. No? Okay. So we all have an idea of what ethics is, right? And most of you may know that ethics comes in the Western world from the Greek word ethos, because a lot in the Western thinking comes from the thinking of the Greek philosophers. That's what built the Western system, intellectual system. And it means custom, habit, character, disposition. Our concepts in the world are derived from religions. And I'm looking at you because Oriental religions have a lot of philosophical wisdom in them, be it Taoism, Hinduism, Confucianism, but they all have the concepts of ethics in their prescriptions on how to live an ethical life. That's why ethics is concerned through philosophy, culture, or religion with what is good for individuals and for society. Not just our own thing, but it should be good for it should be for the common good, not just for our personal good. So through ethics and all these learnings, you get a moral roadmap. What's wrong, what's right, what's good, what's not good. And this moral roadmap is helpful in times of difficulties when you don't know, when you're faced with a difficult issue and you don't know what to do. Because it's easy, you know you can't kill someone, but you don't know if you're a doctor, whether it's the more humane thing to unblock the system or to let the person suffer. So nothing is really black and white. You will be faced with questions all through your life. And you will think, I'm not a doctor, but you may be faced with the choice for a loved one on deciding, let the person live on a machine assisted or not. And I've seen many people who are facing this question, or abortion. Do you save the life of the mother or of the child? So there are difficult questions, and there are lots of areas in ethics, bioethics, business ethics, that help you through making these decisions. Now, when I say governance, do you have an idea? I'm sure you're in a business school, that you must have heard a lot about governance. So I don't know if I should skip through this slide. Governance is all processes of governing. Now that's enlightening. Governance is about governing. Okay, we go a bit further. It deals with institutions, processes, practices, through which issues of common concern are decided upon and regulated. In countries, governments govern. In organizations, management govern. And very often also the membership, the stakeholders, the shareholders. And there are rules, and these rules are for individuals, organizations, and firms. But governance is something we all have to think about. What is very much an issue is good governance, where you say, what is good governance? How do I steer my company? How do I steer the organization? And there you already have a normative attribute, good governance. So think about it. governance impacts us at every level of what we do as human beings. And I put here household, village, municipality, nation, region, or the globe. Global governance is called for in these times of the pandemic, and it's not working very well, to say the least. So then I thought, before we go to business, ethics in business, I was thinking, is there room for questions now?
I have one already. I heard that Geneva is going to be the center for the governance regarding the internet, the use of the internet, digital marketing, what's allowed, what's not allowed.
Yes.
Now, I know the media, for example, there is governance, and a lot of the times it's the First Amendment, freedom of speech, which rules the American way. But is that going to be applied to the internet also, or is it going to be new, or how is that progressing?
I have not been involved in it, but I followed it. It's one of the Swiss ministers, which we call Conseiller d'État. It was the lady, I forgot her name, who was very instrumental. Universities involved, and it's a very good thing because the internet is nowadays without rules.
Mm-hmm.
And we must have some rules for governance if we want to keep society safe for terrorism, all sorts of criminal activities.
Even mobbing for teenagers?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and it's good that Geneva is taking the lead. They had a session, I think, with people from Microsoft and Google, but it's at the start. They're just starting, and after they were launched, the pandemic struck.
Yeah.
So, but internet governance is indeed one of the areas where the limits of governance will be tested.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
Do we have any other questions?
No?
No, I have no questions for the moment. Hi, Moyasel, I just saw you there.
Now, let me then come to ethics in business. And it's very often said that there are only questions about the bad things of business, you know? And there seems to be this general belief in the population that business is morally questionable. Shouldn't be. My family comes from business. You can have clean business or dirty business. But as I was just saying, it's a reputation. One rotten apple, and they say all business people are crooks, right? So it's very important to keep the image of business clean because business is the locomotive of the economy. And the United Nations has a lot of programs on enterprise development, on having the small shop there to fight the big cartel. Well, not to fight, but to be there and to avoid having just cartels. And business is an element of human enterprise and of human society. So the question why we always think about business bad businessmen, etc., is because of the rotten apples. So when you, as people who will be in some sort of business, when you think about business and making profit, just think about it, that there is more than economic gain, more than just profit. You also have to think of the ethics in general, but think about employee rights. Treating your employees correctly is also part of having an ethical business. Stakeholder interests. If you do bad things, your shareholders will withdraw. They will sell their shares. Your company will lose its financial basis. Social contract. You are part of the society. You can't flourish when everybody around you is starving. You are part of what we call the social responsibility of your area and wider. And now we combine this with corporate social responsibility. I'm sure you learn a lot about it. Sustainability. You do business and you put all your chemical waste in the river and the water is used for babies. Can't do that. Just think about it. So there are ethical limits to doing business. And at the heart of business ethics is integrating ethics, what's good, what is morally correct, into business operations. And it has been proven that when you do good business, solid business, you probably prosper more than when you do sleazy business. Now, the roots for business ethics go back to the 1960s, where there was a lot of rebellion in the US, and people from my age know about the roaring 60s, anti-Vietnam, anti-big business, etc. So you had all these movements that came up, civil rights, Kennedy, Martin Luther King. And I'm talking about the US, but it spilled over to France, to Europe as well. But that's where it came. Protests against government's involvement in the war and against the military-industrial complex. So all these questions came up. Now, business, as we know, is not done. So immediately they found a response and they said, we are going to teach you about business ethics. So they responded and they put courses in social issues in business schools. And that led to what has become known as business ethics.
Does it work?
Does it work? I think so. I think that business ethics, at least we start thinking about it.
So why 40 years later, no, 60 years later, we've got Black Lives Matter?
Because life evolves. So how do I escape from this?
So
I did something. I can't click. I'm sorry.
that's all right.
I am technologically challenged. I did something 16 and I'm sorry for that.
That's okay. I don't know where to do.
But I first have to
It's in which computer? It's this one.
exit.
Escape. There you
Okay.
Now you can just go back.
No, but no, I
go.
have
Wait, they have to do view. I'll do that.
Okay. Sorry for that. That's a technological hiccup, but I would also have had it in the room. Now, why did they use the term business ethics? Because that came from something that was already then in the news, medical ethics. And who knows this man, Mr. Hippocrates? Who knows him? Nobody?
Yeah.
Nobody? Ah, yes. You must have a family member who is a doctor.
Yeah.
But
Do you want to
please.
put your mic on?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and obviously we know Hippocrates. We all do know him because he's a great example of achievements.
And the oath, the medical oath for all doctors.
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, I don't know it by heart.
Yes. But there's an oath doctors take because they come in your intimacy. They know all sorts of things you don't want other people to know necessarily. And that's why they take this oath. And they basically say confidentiality and non-maleficence. Oh, no, I've done something again. Anyway, so business ethics is about integrating ethics into business operations. And again, the term came from medical ethics. So the question is, if we are talking about business and ethics since the 1960s, Miss 16, why do we still say business ethics was born in scandal? So I have been looking for a recent scandal. I couldn't find one. So maybe you could find something in the press yourself. But let me give you some golden oldies, some old scandals you may know, okay? Who has known about Mr. Bernie Madoff? Great movie played by Robert De Niro, okay? That is one of the biggest finance scandals in the US, and the man is now in prison for 150 years. Financial scandal. Car industry scandal. Who has not heard about this? You have heard about
I've
this?
heard about it. It's the Volkswagen Dieselgate, where they technically showed less emissions than what the cars were being produced.
So they
They tricked people into believing that the cars are much more safer than they were.
Cleaner as well.
Cleaner too.
Yeah.
It hit Volkswagen very badly. The company was in losses for a long time.
But it was not only Volkswagen.
Yeah.
It was Audi. It was the
Yeah.
whole German car industry.
Because Volkswagen is the biggest company in Volkswagen owns Audi, they own Porsche, they own
Audi.
many other companies.
Yeah.
So if when Volkswagen gets hit, every of the subsidiary gets hit.
And Mrs. Merkel, the German chancellor, had to step in. Daimler paid $1.5 billion over the claims in the US. Still the car industry. Then I have to cover my face in shame because after the industry, we also have in the United Nations our own scandal. And I'm really embarrassed. Shame, 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 monkey on shame, right? In the so-called Oil for Food program. That was basically after the Iraq-Kuwait war. And it was also the first big financial operation of the United Nations. So there was room for crooks, and we discovered that unfortunately, the United Nations has some crooks, right? And some of the crooks we discussed, I knew them myself. So, and I didn't work there, I didn't work with them, but I just knew them. And this was really such a bad scandal. The United Nations was very badly hit. And if you want to see a film, there is a film about the oil for food, backstabbing for beginners. It's a fairly recent film with Ben Kingsley, very charismatic actor, playing the baddie in this movie. So scandals made that we really, every time a scandal hits, you look at what are we going to do? So then we come to business ethics and say, let me first give you the definition. I didn't give this yet. I said where it came from. So business ethics is the application of ethics in business, doing business correctly, you know? And in the international organizations, in the UN and before in others, we also thought, let's have our staff work in a correct way. The first in the multilateral organizations to have an ethics office was the World Bank. Now, the World Bank functions like a bank. They have millions of dollars they disburse. So when you have money, there is temptation. You need rules. So in 1991, the World Bank, as the first of the international intergovernmental systems, set up the Office of Professional Ethics. Shortly after, the fund, also Washington-based in 2000, set up its ethics office. And after this scandalous episode of oil for food in 2006, the United Nations set up its United Nations Ethics Office. So what you want actually when you conduct business ethically is having both the profit and the reputation. You know, think about the social challenges, think about making profit. Because making profit, there's nothing wrong with making profit as long as it is clean profit. There's nothing wrong with doing business as long as you don't sell human beings, drugs, and whatever, you know? So conduct your business ethically. If there is one message I want to give is do this, because even if you have high levels of profit like Volkswagen, you end up paying $1.5 billion in fines. So where is your profit going? And you were responsible, you signed it, you're fired. You're in the street, you'll never get a job again, right? Not him, huh? He's a good guy.
I just mind it.
So, but you can say what you want. If you have no way of steering people and forcing people to do things, they won't. We are lazy. We're human beings. I'm the best example. You don't force me to do something I won't. I say I sent you something, my PowerPoint, yesterday evening. I sent it at lunchtime. Okay. We need to have a stimulus, to be stimulated. Sometimes we call it the carrot and the stick. And in the US, they love the sticks. So what happened with all these scandals in the US? And I didn't put Sarbanes-Oxley and Enron and all these scandals. The US said, that's it, I am going to fine you and I am going to put your chief executives in jail, right? Because very often you say, business is very smart. So you take an insurance for corporate
Negligence.
corporate negligence, medical negligence, you take an insurance, right? But if you go to jail, well, you take 3 times, right? So they had in 1991 in the US, the federal sentencing guidelines for organizations, okay? Heavy fines, rigorous conditions, okay? All trying to minimize the risk of illegal behavior. And I mean, with illegal behavior, you can have things like an electricity company doing a shoddy job in a house, and it's a real scandal. I know all the scandals, that's my job, in New York. So you do a halfway job. Actually, the story was that some electrician got some money on the side, and then he delivered a half-done job, and then the house went on fire, and so many people died, right? It's all illegal behavior, right? So what do? They said, look, we need to have the federal sentencing guidelines gave some steps for, at that time, they called it compliance-based system. You have to have standards and procedures. So, Mr. Electrician, if you have to do a green wire and a red wire and a yellow wire, you don't put all of them, you're fired, right? Because electricity is a big thing, the security thing. Assign high-level individuals to oversee that. Because, if I say, look, listen, you can't do that in team. And you say, no, and you do it, But you need someone who is at the senior level and who can walk to the boss and say, that guy, not good, right? So high-level individuals to oversee compliance. And then you have delegating authority, etc. Important is communicate and train, because we all know don't lie, steal, or cheat. But it's good that you repeat this on the shop floor. When people join the WIPO, my organization, they come to an induction course at every level, from the guy who sits at the door, the doorman, to the director general. And I tell them, don't lie, steal, or cheat. And if you're in doubt, come to me. But, at least you remind them that there are rules and the rules are not for nothing. And if you breach the rules, you have a problem. And I'm not going to protect you because you knew that if you don't know what you can do and what you can't do, I needed to ask permission, remember? If you don't know what you can do and what you can't do, there is a service that guides you for free. And that's my job, right? Or the job of the compliance officer. And then they say respond to offenses. Means basically, you break the rules, out, right? So you have to show by acting that you take ethical behavior seriously. So then there was some self-regulation, etc. Now, I wanted to come to this model, the principles for providing guidance, yes, for ethics programs. And this comes, funnily enough, from the defense industry, because they were very hard hit. So, and they're smart, they have the money. So they sat here, first come up with the code of ethics. I mean, I always say, Mr. Moses, who lived many thousand years ago around the Red Sea, wrote on a piece of stone 10 commandments, right? And he said, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, etc. 10 commandments. So a code of ethics is basically the modern day commandments of Mr. Moses for the company, right? And by then you went to Sunday school. I don't know if you went, and they taught you how not to lie, steal, or cheat. So we do the same in the business, and we train employees, tell them don't lie, steal, or cheat, right? And then you must have an atmosphere where people can speak out. 16, if I behave badly, you won't
You're
have
out.
friends anymore. But the atmosphere must be such that if something goes wrong, you can go up to the top and say there is something wrong in this company. Okay? And then the accountability, of course. Yeah. So that came basically to the creation of the ethics officer, to which indirectly I owe my job, because the office, the function of ethics officer was created, and that's like the advisor. Sometimes it's called, UNICEF calls it the ethics advisor, IMF calls it the ethics advisor. In the WIPO, we call it the chief ethics officer, I don't know, it's cultural, but I don't have any chief roles, I just advise. And I tell them, I advise you. If you don't do what I advise, you have a problem, but it's your responsibility. If I'm asked to testify, I will say, I advise. So advisors may be the better term. So you will find very often in business, compliance officer or ethics and compliance officers, especially in the banking world. You'll find compliance. Don't do business with Iraq if it's on the blacklist, or with North Korea or whatever. International sanctions. Don't hire minors. Don't deal in human trafficking, whatever. Compliance. But ethics is broader than compliance, although the whole debate of ethics and compliance is that basically they're allies. They are both sides of the same coin, ethics and compliance. It's all about values. So, as I said, lots of codes of ethics, the modern day variant of Mr. Moses' 10 Commandments. You have it with Boeing. Know the Boeing company?
Yep.
India buys a lot of Boeing.
World buys another book.
And they have a code of conduct, which is the code of ethics. NASA, who has followed the landing of Mars? No hands? You didn't see the Mars landing? Oh,
Yeah.
my God, I was there, waiting for the thing to happen. Right? So NASA has ethics rules. And WIPO has ethics rules, the code of ethics, you can read more about it, right? So just to say, everybody has ethics rules. I think this may be a point to take a break and look for questions, comments, observations, opposition, criticism.
Anyone? I'm looking at the chat box. So I'll start a question. I always have questions. What if somebody, I'm thinking, I just saw a movie and you should all watch it too, called Dark Waters. It's just out now. It's about DuPont and their Teflon chemical composition, which was cancerous, which at some stage in the States, everything, including to the carpet that your baby crawled on, etc., had Teflon in it. And with that Teflon processing came a lot of wastewater, which was then put in the rivers. And there's a certain area around about in Virginia where the Teflon manufacturing company is. Babies started being born with one nostril instead of two, or with badly formed eyes, etc. And in fact, DuPont went on and on and on and lost cases, but then appealed, etc. And there's something like 69,000 people who posted a complaint, and DuPont are taking them one by one. So the end of the movie was by the time they get to the 69,000 complaints, we'll be in the year 3000 and something. So what's that about? Like, how does DuPont continue producing Teflon to ignoring the fact? How does that work?
Well, you said it in the beginning,
Mhm.
loopholes,
Mhm.
good lawyers, power balance. You know, DuPont can hire any number of lawyers. I mean, I'm from Suriname. We have like 2.5 lawyers in the government, right? How can we deal with a big company who has more lawyers than we have inhabitants, right? And they can hire anything and everything because in the end, I'm a lawyer by training. And one of the things I studied came with the conclusion, there is poor man's law, justice, and rich man's justice. You know, if you're rich, the poor is rich. It's rich against poor. And there it takes movements to say this cannot be done. And it takes ethical leadership. And it takes the young people who will have children and want to get forward to do something to get ahead. You don't want to have children that are affected. You had a big scandal with this battery factory.
I think with that.
Union Carbide, I think. Huh?
Yeah, Union Carbide. It was after the gas leaks in Bhopal.
The Bhopal scandal. That was an enormous scandal. There was this
British company which allowed the gas leakage to happen in Bhopal, which has caused a lot of people cancer, a lot of people died. And the CEO of the company who was responsible, he was allowed to go, like, before being arrested, he was given time to leave the country, and he went back to UK. So there's still cases on them. And Indian I'm glad that the cases are still going on, and it happens.
So that part I didn't know, that the head of the company could escape.
Yeah, easily.
I have a question to the audience. Can you hear Anoop when he's talking in the room?
Yeah, at least I can hear him.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Does anybody else have a knowledge of a scandal that happened in
I
their
have
country?
a scandal I wanted to mention. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I heard that in the United States, specifically in the police department, due to the training that they receive, there are many, many casualties that are accidental, and it's neither the police's nor it's not assailant or anybody that tries to harm them. There was this company that, for example, produced guns that were, like water guns, but they looked like real guns. And policemen actually shot kids because of this company. It turns out if they were trained for longer and better, they wouldn't commit these mistakes. And turns out that the police department would rather pay the families for deaths and the damage caused than actually invest the amounts required for the training upfront.
McGuinness, yes. I wanted to see your name. I think this is a very important point. And that's what we call civil consciousness, you know, because we all feel that this is wrong. This is wrong. But for them, it is, look, I have so much money, so cost benefit, okay, payout. What's the life of a child, right? And that's wrong. It's ethically wrong. It's like, I like to say this, slavery was legal, but it's morally wrong, right? So all these things, it's the new generation who will point the finger and say, we can't do that. But what we see that a lot of things still need to be regulated. There are lots of areas where there is still a Wild West, and this is one of the areas. And thank you for bringing it up. So, shall I continue? So, WIPO has a code of ethics, and WIPO 16 introduced it. It's a forum for intellectual property services, and it's part of the UN system. I'm going to skip through the UN system, the United Nations system, because I hope that after 76 years of existence, you will all know what the United Nations is, and you will all know that it needs a lot of restructuring and a lot of increase in effectiveness. And I let Anu do his thesis on this with a lot of success, because yes, the system is failing us. And it's a huge system, so you can flip through this itself. The United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals are now on the agenda, and business will be partnering. Actually, it's the biggest United Nations operation to benefit businesses for the coming years. So there, I'm sure there will be an ethics component. What do I do in my job is what every ethics office in the private and the public sector does. We come together as ethics officers so many times a year and we discuss, etc. We look at conflicts of interest, you see? I mean, I can't be a gun supplier and be the person who decides which guns to buy for the police department, right? Outside activities, I preach here, don't lie, steal, or cheat. And then I go and I have my little business on the side where I sell illegal drugs or arms or whatever, right? So gifts, hospitality, gifts is, corruption, it's a gift,
It's a bribery.
Thank you very much. So the borderline between gifts and bribing. So, if it's a something of nominal value, okay. But if it is a lavish gift, well, listen, Obama used to say, if you like it, forget about it. So training ends, and then if there is a whistleblower, you protect the person, right? So then you have the core values. Every company now has its values on the website, and the values are basically the ones independence, loyalty, respect for human rights, etc. And the principles: don't abuse your authority. I am the boss, you do what I say, even if it's wrong, you see? And commitment to a respectful working environment. I am the boss, you go and get my laundry, you can't do that,
No.
unless you're paid to pick up the laundry and it's in your job description. So we come now. So basically what we have discussed today, if I may recap, ethics is a system of moral principles that affects how people make decisions and lead their lives. And I hope that you, as the young generation and in this business school, have a high moral standard and to put your ethics bar high. Governance is everything that has to do with governing at every level of human action. Anywhere, regionally, globally, in the police department, in the school, in the city of Geneva, and hopefully soon on the internet. Good governance is what you strive for. Governance per se, but good governance is what your stakeholders, shareholders, member states want. The presumption that business is morally questionable, we looked at it. If the officers adhere to high moral standards, we can hopefully one day eliminate this line. And we don't look at the moral questions of business, but we look at the good it brings about. It creates employment, it generates profit, it pays taxes. That's what we want for businesses. So, as I said, it's not just about making money, it's about doing it in an ethically correct way. And we looked at what the rules are, the original rules, the beginning of the movement in the US, in the world, in international organizations. Corporate accountability means that you can pay a fine, or your chief executives and all who work with them can go and spend some time in prison. If you want your employees to behave correctly, you try to minimize the risk and give them some training on ethics and compliance. And I gave you some examples of guidelines and codes. And as I said, a lot of this can be found in this publication. So I wanted to close before the question and answer session, and we discussed it already. What is the net gain if you go to prison, whether it's in the UN or in the public sector or in the private sector, and your company has to pay hefty fines? So you have made a lot of money, but the damage you cause may be irreparable. A lot of businesses had to close after scandals. You know, we had some affairs in the UN, United Nations, where the heads of the organizations had to resign. This man in UNRWA, very fine Swiss gentleman. So whether it's a business or not-for-profit organization, there is win-win in doing your business ethically. Then I come to career and reputation. You will start your career at one point, and you think it's a big world. It's not, because you will move in the same circles and you will meet the same people at different steps of the road. And they will remember your reputation. We remember scandals much more than we remember the good things. So if you build your career, think of the long haul. I had in school, in law school, a judge as a professor. And he told me, later I understood, because they invited me to be on the training course for judges. He told me, never do anything that can harm your career anywhere down the road. And I think this is important when you're young. Don't think I bend the rules, I cheat, I steal, I do something. There is always the ethical alternative. You may not know it. You may be in dire need of money and you think, I do something illegal. Trust me, you are young, you don't have a lot of experience and networks, but there is someone in your circles who can help you. Go and look for help. You're amongst the privileged. You're in this business school where there are so many people who can guide and help you. If you have a question, I'm sure that 16 or Paloma or some professor can have a confidential chat with you and say, look, there is an alternative to this. Don't let people harass you sexually, right? Because at one point it will come out whether it was the Harvey Weinstein or the other Stein who died in prison. So Epstein, Prince Andrew, the whole thing. You don't want that. People, it will stay on the internet and you will forever be associated with it. And what you now have in the UN system, and I'm sure in the private sector, you have robots going through your applications and searching anything on you. The higher the position is you aim for, the more you vet it. In my case, there was some London company that had to find if I had any fines, any breaches, any imprisonment, and they do that. And they do psychometric testing on when you lie or not. So it is in your interest to think about ethics with everything you do. So if you want to build your career and make profit, think of your leadership style. Think of your values, your principles, and that will build your reputation. And then I have something here, which the late Professor Hoffman for the Center for Business Ethics in the US said. And I like this. Have I looked at the problem from the perspective of all of the affected parties? Who will be harmed and who will be helped? What alternative courses of actions do I have? You can always find an alternative course. Which outcomes are consistent with my values and duties and often that of the company or the organization? Here is the question. Would I be willing to share the decision to my boss, to the chief executive officer, to the board, to the stakeholders? And I like to say to my grandmother, would I like my grandmother to know I'm doing this, right? So, in time perspective, will in 5 years from now the decision be would I be as happy with the decision 5 years from now? And I hope this will be your guideline, because after all, when I came in, I discussed with 16, the Geneva Business School says real business, not sleaze business, real business, responsible leaders. And responsibility has these elements: values, principles, reputation. The school is there since 1995. If there would have been a reputational issue, you wouldn't have made it, right? So it is about responsibility, legal, ethical, moral, social, as a human being. So, ladies, gentlemen, I thank you, and I'm open for questions, comments, criticisms, whatever. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I'll read one comment by Daniel, who says, longer and better is more expensive. So probably ethically, does it cost more in a business plan to be
Yes.
ethical?
Probably in a short-term calculation, that might be the case. But again, I say, think of the long haul, right? Because if you have a short, speedy, cutting corners thing, you may end up with Volkswagen, 1.5 billion of fines, or in jail.
Daniel, does that answer your question or your comment? Okay, maybe you can get back later. Then I've got Moyo. Moyo is from, lives in Geneva.
Yeah.
Thank you for the amazing session. That's for you. What is the most difficult compliance ethical issue you have faced, and how did you resolve it? And if you don't mind sharing.
Okay, this was about, I think, I can't say a case, but what I find most difficult is when people break down in your office and you see they are wrestling with all these things. And it's very hard because there may be reasons, there may not be, you know. But the good thing of that is that they feel that my office is a safe space where they can come and break down. But for me, it's very hard to see people suffering. It's not the case, it's the situation. Yes.
Does that happen a lot?
Before COVID, when I had one-to-one sessions in the office, I would say frequently, not a lot, but frequently.
So in a way, that's a good sign because people are thinking.
And people feel free to come to my office. Yeah. So thank you. Yes.
Okay. Next one is Sean. What do you think about the idea of anarchy, number one?
Yeah.
And number two, assuming if you don't get caught by anyone when you do wrong, what is the rationale behind making the right decision?
That's a very good question. And trust me, you will always be caught. If not now, then later. Because if it is, we now have cameras everywhere. You think nobody sees you, you don't know who sees you. You think nobody knows, somebody will know. You will be somewhere and you're sleeping and you're dreaming and you say something. A bit of your DNA will be there. Chances are that you will be caught. And then for yourself, do you want to live with this stress? Mm-hmm. Who will get me when?
Yeah.
I don't want that, right? Now, anarchy, that's the internet.
Yeah.
That's the internet. And I think that at one point, people see that anarchy is not sustainable. Anarchy is I do what I want. Yes, you do what you want, but if I do what I want and you do what you want, it's a jungle. The strongest one will win. Mm-hmm. We don't want that. We are human beings. We think that we have brains, empathy, that We are thinking, caring people, and we should be able to live together harmoniously. And then I come to all the scriptures, be they the Holy Quran, be they Taoism, be they animism from Africa, great for environment. We have a bit in my country, you worship nature, be it Hinduism or Buddhism or the Christian philosophy, Judaism. They all tell you do this because that's the social contract. We live together. We cannot survive alone. And you see all these movies of all these alone people in the time of the caveman. You can't live alone. To survive as a human species, we need to live in groups. Now, if you have to live in groups, you need to have some set of rules to live as a group, right? And that it's just because we cannot survive as human beings alone. We are not bears or lions or whatever, right? We're just weak human beings, very weak species, huh? A stupid COVID virus can kill us.
Yeah.
Even animals live in packs. They don't
Yes.
live-
Yes.
No creature is alone.
Well, there are some creatures who are the lone wolf, right?
Even wolves, they live in packs, right?
But you have the lone wolf who
That is more
survives.
a
I know.
story than like wolves of the hunt in packs, they live in packs.
But there it's the strongest one.
Yeah.
But we want to be giving rights to everyone and not just the bully who's there wins, right?
That's why we are humans. That is the Darwinism theory of evolution, strongest survives. But we are humans.
And
We are
that's
humans.
why the moral conscience. Thank you for that.
Okay, we've got quite a lot of questions, so that's good. I've got one from Marie Rosalie. How would you approach business for those countries with high tolerance for bribery?
If you're talking about my country, I don't take offense because you're right. Look, listen, there is no country in the world where the population is not upset about corruption. None. And I'm going to take my country because then I don't offend other countries, right? So if the president appoints his wife in 8 positions, you're like, what? Where's the job description? Is it only one person? She doesn't even have a real degree. So only one person you can appoint. We're shocked. And there will be a lot of pressure. The number 2 in my government, nice man, I like him. He was a friend of my brother. Has 38 kids with I don't know how many wives. He appointed all these 38 kids in government. It's nepotism. Do you know the word nepotism? Let me write it down for you. Anoop, you know what nepotism is?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain?
Nepotism is basically appointing someone in a position of power in any position just because they're a relative of yours.
Absolutely. Nepotism has the word nephew in it from the Romans. So it's basically the illegal children or illegitimate children of the Pope, family and friends. You can't do that. You can't rob the country of the oil reserves and put it in your pocket because you're in the government. And what happens? People get upset. We now have the power of social media. You see these things coming up. And in the end, there will be an election defeat, right? So the people will vote with their voice.
If they are democracy.
Yes, and if there's not a democracy, there will be pressure from outside because people will leave their countries. They come as refugees, and then the intergovernmental community will tell you, look, you have a problem in your country, I'll clean up your mess, right? Or you have NGOs who will say, I'll sue this government. So we are getting tools to fight corruption, and we should use these tools. There is, what is it called? Corruption International, great organization.
Yeah.
Headquarters in Germany, they have an office here. So there is movement because we don't want it. We think it's morally apprehensible. It's wrong.
Thank you. Next question is Nojas again. Is a cashless society more easy for those in power to govern? What do you mean by cashless? Like a barter system?
No, the card, I think. Electronic money.
Notice, do you want to expand on that?
I wrote it down. I don't know if you can hear me clearly, therefore I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to say something about a cashless society?
Yeah, imagine, for example, in a crazy future where people do not own cash anymore. Like all of your money is just digital numbers in your bank account.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah. So this has been an ongoing debate because there are two economies in Europe that are basically cash economies, Switzerland and Germany, you know? And I am, since I've been living here for a long time, pre-COVID, I would go to the bank, take my money out, and go to the post office or wherever and pay my bills. Right now, I'm more electronic. But it is, you have this thing with money. Now, don't think that because money is not electronic, you cannot follow it, because the Swiss are very smart. All bills have a number. And the federal bank, it's called National Bank, Banque Nationale, which is the central bank of Switzerland, knows exactly how many money is in Switzerland, in the vaults, in the safes, and abroad. And they see how the money moves. But personally, I don't like electronic things because I don't trust the IT system, with all respect. And I mean, if you can crash systems like this hacker who got all sorts 2 days ago, this young guy from Switzerland. I mean, you can, as long as IT is not safe, I don't want my money to be in Bitcoins or in a number or a code bar or a QR code. I don't want it. I want to see my money, right? But if it is more difficult or not, I know that India had a big change of the system.
It was more a stupid change, if I may say so, because our Prime Minister, he just changed the denomination of few notes. He just cut out the currency and immediately wanted people to switch directly to the cashless system, or more economic and mixed economy, which, when it was recovering, he introduced a new set of taxes which completely destroyed the actual growing economy into a complete free fall, I would say. It's only now recovering. And I also have a huge problem with the Indian economy itself, so I don't know if we're going to a tangent and rant about that.
But the Minister of Finance was a big shot in the World Bank with a huge reputation. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so, but the thing is, governments like to know what you have in the bank. Now, we talk about taxes. My brother used to say, you don't pay taxes, you cheat me, because then my government can't pay for streets, can't pay for hospitals, can't pay for nurses. Correct. But if I pay taxes and you steal my money as a government, what do? So both sides of the equation are correct. So what you want is a fair tax system, and I'm probably a bit biased. But in Switzerland, I pay in 2 cantons. Actually, I pay worldwide because there is no double taxation treaty with Suriname. And I have found out one thing. If you do things correctly, you basically gain. Because the system is very transparent, very helpful. This is probably the only country in the world where you call the tax office and you say, how do I fill out my form? And they help you, right? So that's a good system. You go to my country, they don't even let you in the tax office, right? Leave it. So it has to be trust and reputation. You know, I know that if I pay, let's say I pay too much, they will pay me back.
Yeah.
The Swiss will pay you back. I pay too much in my country, I forget the money. It's gone forever for 3,000 years, right? So it has to be also reputation, trust, rules, principles, systems, right? So that brings us to, again, so what is better, cash or cashless? And I think this is a societal choice. The society has to choose. But don't I think that if you have a place like, you say India, I don't say it, I don't know India, my country, right? You want to keep money under your mattress, right? So the tax man doesn't get it. I don't know. Here, you leave your money in the bank, it's 0.01.
I was going to say, it's not the tax man, it's the bank that's the thief.
That's more, yeah, you could fear more, right? So it's both sides, and it is the society that is shaping its society, its country, its rules, including the tax and the finance system. You have more questions?
Yeah, I do. I'll go quickly. I won't be able to do them all, but Valma was asking if COVID-19 has put a damper in the business of ethics and all that.
Yes and no. It's the traditional questions are fewer, but there are other questions, and a lot of them have to do with privacy and IT.
Mm-hmm.
But there is fewer interhuman friction because nobody is on the shop floor or teleworking.
Yeah, then I'll go through. There's some very interesting chats, guys. Thank you for your input. Yeah, there's a mention of the mafia. I was going to mention that too, because they have a very strict code of ethics, but it's not quite the same ethics.
Well,
but they are respectful in a way.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can say the mafia, but you can also say organized crime. And new studies have come out on organized crime. There's the UN Office of Drugs and Crime. And the worrying thing is not the mafia and all that, it's the interwovenness of criminal activity with government and business, which we increasingly have in the Caribbean and Central America, and to some extent in Brazil. And that's worrying. And there you need intergovernmental rules and some sort of machinery where the UN is failing, that puts things on track and say that you cannot do. But because government is slow and heavy and, whatever governments are, we cannot catch up with the speed with which organized crime is moving.
Yeah, I understand that. All right. We've got time for one more. Before that, I would like to remind Paloma put the link there for the form, for the evaluation form. And then I'll leave the final word to Akama, Amir.
First of all, I would like to thank you for such an amazing lecture. Well, my major is international relations, and the question of ethics nowadays is very important.
Yes.
Because, as you mentioned earlier, we don't really know what is right, but it is very important to have a support and to know who are the right people that we can approach. So, as far as I understood, we were talking about the moral questions related to business and choices. I'd like to ask a question related to morally correct concepts that might be advisable to follow for private sector businesses, because in some countries it is easier to get support for public sector than private. Is there any Bible of business ethics that people can use for their initial steps in business development and their protection for individual or maybe regional? Thank you.
Thank you for this wonderful question. And indeed, you find a lot of resources in here, especially the second part, where Professor Singer talks about choices in the private sector, in the health sector. Professor van den Hoven speaks about choices in IT, in technology. But yes, there are Bibles, and you have the handbooks of business, Crane and Matten, the UK one. There are thousands of business gurus, Peter Drucker, what else? Lots and lots. But the bottom line is, I think there is too much. And I think you have some ethics courses, Paloma told me, in Madrid. And I think it's sort of sharpening your intuition, because we all have this intuitive feeling of what's right and wrong. Now, mind you, the private sector has more to lose than the public sector in matters of ethics. Because if you're fined in the private sector, I think Enron went bankrupt. You know, the big scandal, and they went bankrupt, off the books. Your shares stumble, your shareholders run away, you know? So you have more to lose. The banks that collapsed, Wall Street, the collapse of Wall Street. So there, I think after that, they were even more aware of the ethics rules, and in the banks and the finance sector, it's compliance, right? So first thing is the rules of the company. And if you don't agree or you have the feeling something is wrong, then you can do some study, check with the business school, because you will have a lot of teachers. You can contact me, you can contact anyone to say, look, how would you dissect this problem? We spoke about doctors, the medical thing. If you have a question, break it down in parts. Which step in your view is acceptable? Which step is unacceptable? Which step is in the gray area, right? And I know 16 now for some time. She's a great moral compass. You can ask her, you know? No, I mean, at the school, you have Paloma. You have other people you can engage with. Even when you leave the school, I think you have an alumni society and you stay in touch. You can ask. But rather ask 3 times than go 1 time wrong, right? And the private sector, again, my family was in business, you know? I know what it is. What are you going to do? There's a lot you can do legally. I have someone, because I was working, you know, I'm again from Suriname. So I go for my driver's license, right? It's such a nightmare. So then somebody says, look, you have the money, you come from Switzerland, just pay the guy. I said, I will be, you know what, but I will not pay. It's my right, it's the rules. I'm not going to spoil. I'm not going to murky the waters. So I had to go to the boss of the whole operation to get my driver's license renewed. It took me a week, but I never paid anyone. And I told the guy, you stop making your people ask for money. And then he said, well, it's only 10 francs or whatever. I said, it doesn't matter. It's the principle. They get a salary. And I say, if you want to put a gratuity box, happy, and put 5 francs, fine, right? But don't ask me to pay. I refuse as a matter of principle. In the corporate social responsibility rules, they talk about facility payments. And they go like, okay, pay the guy. I'm against that. Once you start doing that, you know, you're putting the borders, you're moving the borderlines, and you shouldn't. And if you don't start fighting the fight, it always starts with a little bit. In French, they have this wonderful saying, qui vole un œuf, vole un bœuf. And you may translate it 16, because I think it's a very good saying.
Qui vole un œuf, vole un bœuf means who steals an egg can steal a cow.
Yes.
Basically.
So start small, but it can add, because mentally you start thinking it's okay, but it is not okay. And yes, you walk more. And yes, you cost some more than the 10 francs for your driver's license. But nobody can ever tell you, you paid me. Huh? And I put it on the internet. No, I didn't pay you. I was a pain in everybody's neck, but I didn't pay.
Does that answer your question? Whoops.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, maybe it's time to go, I think, but we've had a fantastic time. We ended up 90 people throughout the world, so well done, guys. Again, the book is in our bookshelves in Geneva, but I also have a PDF copy. If anybody is interested, just let Paloma or myself know, and I will share the copy with you. Also, you should know that one of our DBA students in Kazakhstan has written the book review and will be published, right?
It will be published on a very influential blog called TVM. It's transnational dispute management, and it's read by the biggest arbitrators in the world and about the leading lawyers.
So kudos to Geneva Business School students once again. Have a very nice evening, guys, and look forward to next week, which is maybe Paloma, you want to talk about next week?
Yeah, sure. Now that we're all here, next week we're having the next industry insight. It's going to be completely virtual, and it's about social entrepreneurship, which is going to be quite interesting on a social startup. Her name is Nasima. She will be talking to us about social entrepreneurship and leadership.
Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you again.